WYG, your host this evening. My background is 25 years of doing public-private partnerships. The PPP sits there, and project finance in different countries around the world. So it's very hard to do 25 years in 20 minutes that I've been asked to do, but I hope that I'll give you a little introduction or a flavour of the huge value that project management and programme management has in the delivery of all sorts of public-private partnerships, and then leave some time for questions. So, do the presentation. I'm very happy to take any questions either during, but I'll try and leave time at the end for questions, or indeed during any of the plenary sessions. So, public-private partnerships. The clue there, I think, is in delivering outcomes. I don't know how many people in the room have been involved in a public-private partnership before, or involved in one now. So, not many of you.
Maybe not you.
The key here is that in trying to create a public-private partnership, it is really a regulated business by a huge number of contracts and different stakeholders coming together to agree through contracts how they'll work together in order to produce an asset that will last for 20 or 30 years and ultimately be run privately with a view to running for the 25 years, making the return that's required for the investors, delivering to the stakeholders, and handing it back to the state thereafter. Those are the essential characteristics. That's the scariest slide you'll ever see in terms of project and programme management. That really, and I'm sorry it's a bit blurry, is an analysis of the contracts and the interrelationship between them in order to put one of these projects together. So you can imagine, without the basic project skills that sit at the heart, programme management skills, none of these projects would happen. The key is not to panic. That's good advice, I think, anywhere on complex projects, but not to panic. The logic of the projects and the logic of each contract sits inherently in the contract itself. So every party to a contract has its role to play, and the real skill is for the integrators, the people who can work out the interface between projects, something you deal with on a daily basis, to be able to see the big picture as well as the small print. So there are three messages that I would ask you to take away from this. The first is programme management. I'll talk about that a bit later. The second, the essential skills of project management. And the third element, which is absolutely at the heart of any public-private partnership that involves the creation of an asset, a building asset in particular, is managing the life cycle. So most of you will know that the initial capital cost of an asset, say, is 1. The operational cost equivalent to that may be 5 on the ratio, and then running a business and a hospital together, making a hospital, could be a factor of 200. So in looking to pull the different skills and contracts together, you're looking to design something that will last for a period of time, have a natural tension between the different interests, but will take into account the life cycle. So that means, in practice, what you invest up front for a hospital door, which might last for 3 years, versus a door that might last for 5 years, you think that's not much, multiply that by the number throughout the life cycle of 20-25 years, and you'll find it has a huge impact on the viability of a project. So I'll come to that later. I'm very happy to ask questions on it. So, Programme Management 3.0. I think PMI has project management, programme management, and I understand portfolio management as well. But the programme management that really makes a difference is the ability for the systems thinking, the different parts of your body that make up the whole and how it fits together. Leadership. These projects happen because leaders step in and make things happen, bring their teams, and are able to communicate, sell, and make things happen. And thirdly, this is a business that's being created. Even if it's a hospital, even if it's not providing the operations of a hospital, for example, or it's a power station, or it's a railway, you have to develop over a period of time some knowledge of how businesses work in order to be able to deliver the whole of a public-private partnership, not just the asset, but the running of the business. So everything is context. The soft skills that you learn about and you practice become hugely important in trying to negotiate. Everything is through some degree of negotiation. The experts who write about projects, and Cenk and I have talked about this, and we were talking about it earlier today, is there are a lot of experts and a lot of books, and I read a lot of books on the subject, and I was probably one of the pioneers of PPPs. We made up a lot of it, how it works, by doing it. Afterwards, the experts come back and they say, well, they made this decision and they did this. And if you Google one of my projects, you get thousands of hits from people who were never involved in the project, who will analyse what happened. And the truth is, it's a bunch of intelligent people working really hard, trying to negotiate the best they can to get a deal closed and make it work afterwards. So the skills that you have in facilitating, the softer skills, the skills to understand the context, and then the detail, these are hugely valuable. And project managers are the people who do that. And they do it really, really well. Very valuable as well. If you have the chance to take any role on these type of projects, your value to the rest of the world and to the development of these programs is huge. So, part 2 then is the project management itself. This is what you guys are either experts in or developing expertise in. As I said, there's the creative art of the multidisciplinary team, your toolbox. I don't intend to go through the toolbox of PMI. It sits there, it's honed over years of practice, that's for good reason. It works well. But the skill is the discipline and the art of getting things done. There are lots of projects, lots of programs that drift, lots of statistics about things going wrong. But at the end of the day, it's usually down to the leadership and the project management skills working together to get the best out of teams. Teams who work through the night to come up with new solutions. Teams who work to understand the interface management. Teams who invest to think around the problem and think how different industries have solved things. And as the PPP program develops here, I'm sure lots of precedents will come out, but a lot of it will be down to the project managers trying to make things work that perhaps don't quite really fit together. So agility, change and adaptation. The issue that you have, I would say that's a sort of classic approach to how you might organise a complex project. Corporate governance, the strategy, selected projects that sit in there, a portfolio. That's a good way to organise the management and delivery of a PPP. Triple constraint, you're all familiar with that. Easy to talk about, hard to manage, but all of those elements come together in the decision making which is guided by good quality project management. When I talked about the life cycle, on the bottom you have from feasibility through to operation. I've been very lucky working with WIG. We do a huge amount of work here. I've done a lot of experience in the middle and with the operations as well. We've got, and we're very lucky between us all, to have a good knowledge of the whole life cycle of developing a project all the way to handing it back. What you'll see there is the risk profile, very generic, but the risk profile for the public sector, and the black is the risk profile for a private sector. So when I talk about agility, being able to understand the big picture and the small print and the interface and how it fits together, these are all what I tend to call stress points. because the ability to manage these stress points is the difference between success and failure. As I say, and it's the integrative thinking of a project manager that can anticipate, plan, good evidence, delivery, bring teams together, problem solving, soft and hard skills, that makes the difference in these projects between success and failure. And the very hard truth is that if one party is badly failing, then the whole project can fail. So it's not as simple as just being right. It's never enough just to be right. It's very much about being able to manage a situation, what the footballers might call game management. The ability to see the pitch, what's happening, and the ability to really work with and understand the stress points. Where's the money going to come from for a change? You know, it's not as simple as making a claim to a government and saying, I want money for this. Every change, every variation, someone somewhere has to pay for. And the contract management that sits with the project management becomes very important. That's the best drawing. If you have one drawing to think about really what's a project about, that's a good one to go back to. It's my favourite. This is taken from WIG's asset management life cycle. But this is the key difference, as I said at the beginning, to know how much it's going to cost you to run a hospital, a power station, a railway in the operating phase. These decisions are made in the feasibility, construction and design phases. So the decisions that you make, the appraisal of the total cost of doing a project, running a project, become very important, and the expertise to try and create an operating model to be able to say, if we spend more now, will we spend less later? And then, I'm sure you're familiar with it, you net present value, bring it back in today's terms, today's money, to be able to say, actually, sometimes it's a very good decision to spend more on a hospital front than it is during the operating phase, because the net present value tells you that's the answer. Some of it is instinct. This is quite new. People haven't been doing this regularly. No one knows how long the coating on the glass will last if it's there to reflect heat and make it more efficient to operate. People know how long wooden windows last if they're maintained properly. People know a little bit more about hospital doors and metal kicking plates that sit there, or the corners that get knocked off as the trolleys go back and forward. Little things, big costs, hugely important. Recycling of capital, if you have the risks, if you go back to the previous slide, if I drew on this differently, I can't work these machines properly, I'm obviously a Luddite, but if you just follow my finger, at certain points people want to leave during the construction and maybe recycle their investment back into new projects. To do that, you need people who are going to come in who can look to say, I'm getting an investment return consistent with my risks. So a pension fund who might want to invest in infrastructure is going to be absolutely sure that there's enough money there to pay for the operating and the big repairs and things that have to happen. If they don't, and they're not happy, and I speak internationally, not about Turkey, they will tend to go to those places where that work has been done properly. Finally, building information management. For those of you who work in the construction industry, I'm sure you're aware of the big link between data, procurement, operating, and how everything really is tagged with the data now. And the ability to model it, manage it, and work with it is definitely the future. So if you get a chance to ever be involved with an initiative or an opportunity that involves the link between data, almost like an app, on a massive scale, that shows you 3 dimensions, 4 dimensions, 5 dimensions of how a hospital, for example, is put together, is used to it's used to put the ducting in the right place, to make the maintenance easy. It's there to tag, it's to look at the asset condition, to have to predict. Again, this is the future. Everything, I think, in the UK and Europe, I'm sure here, will move to the link between asset management and building information, turning the components of the asset into data, and data that can be used effectively for the future. And it links all the way back into the supply chains. That's my prediction for the future anyway. You can't read that, so apologies, but one of the other characteristics of a public-private partnership, particularly in hospitals, for example, is the fact that there's a unitary charge, an annual sum divided by 12, that is the payment that goes to the owners through what's called the special purpose vehicle. That is hugely complicated to get right, because you're having to put all the different elements of the project, and it's indexed, and then there are penalties for non-performance. So you can interpret the level of complexity, which can be 20, 30, 40, 50 pages.